Hello and welcome to the Global News. I'm your anchor and here are the top stories for today. Senate Democrats are refusing to advance a major Department of Homeland Security funding bill after a Border Patrol agent fatally shot 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Pretty in Minneapolis. This was the second shooting by federal agents in the city this month as part of Operation Metro Surge, which has deployed roughly 3,000 immigration officers to the region. The House has already bundled DHS money into a $1.2 trillion spending package. The Senate must reach 60 votes to avoid a partial government shutdown when current funding expires on January 30. Democrats are demanding tighter oversight of ICE and Border Patrol, including de-escalation training and expanded use of body cameras. Representative Angie Craig urged Senate Democrats to hold the line while state officials are demanding that DHS pull its agents out of Minnesota. American rock climber Alex Honnold has made history by free-soloing Taipei 101, a 508-meter skyscraper in Taiwan without ropes or protective gear. The ascent, broadcast live worldwide by Netflix, took around 90 minutes as Honnold used horizontal metal beams and narrow ledges to haul himself up the building's exterior. He paused occasionally on balconies to rest and waved to cheering crowds below. The climb was postponed 24 hours due to rain adding to the drama. While fans hailed the feat as another milestone for the free solo star, critics questioned the ethics of televising such a high-risk stunt in real time. They fear it could inspire dangerous copycats. Over 10,000 viewers watched the live stream. President Donald Trump is blaming Minnesota's Democratic leaders after federal Border Patrol agents shot and killed 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Pretty in Minneapolis. Trump posted on Truth Social accusing Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey of inciting insurrection. He claimed local police were held back, forcing federal agents to defend themselves. Homeland Security officials say Pretty was armed with a 9mm handgun and resisted violently. Bystander video appears to show him holding a phone as agents opened fire. The shooting sparked large street protests and forced the postponement of an NBA game in downtown Minneapolis. Trump also questioned why Representative Ilhan Omar has $34 million in her account, linking the incident to monetary fraud and demanding ICE do their job. Meta is suspending access to its AI characters for teenage users across Facebook, Instagram, and other apps as it rushes to build a safer teen-specific version. The company says accounts that show a user is under 18 will lose access in the coming weeks. Teens will still be able to use Meta's more general AI assistant for schoolwork, sports, and hobbies. The move follows mounting pressure from parents, U.S. states, and regulators accusing Meta of failing to protect children from harmful content and addictive design features. The pause comes just days before major court cases in New Mexico and California over alleged harms to young users. CEO Mark Zuckerberg is expected to testify. The family of Cornelius Taylor is filing a second lawsuit after he was killed when a bulldozer rolled over his tent during a camp clearance in Atlanta last year. This new suit targets the nonprofits that helped oversee the sweep. Partners for Home and Safe House Outreach are accused of failing to verify that Taylor's tent was empty before heavy machinery moved in. The camp at Old Wheat Street was cleared ahead of Martin Luther King Jr. holiday events near Ebenezer Baptist Church. Taylor's relatives already sued the city in July. They are seeking damages and compensation for medical and burial costs. Advocates say the case highlights inhumane policies aimed at disappearing visible homelessness before major events. The United States is preparing a $1.6 billion investment in USA Rare Earth. The Oklahoma-based company is developing a major mine in Texas and a magnet factory in Oklahoma. In exchange, Washington would receive a 10% equity stake plus warrants. Investment bank Cantor Fitzgerald leads a separate effort to raise more than $1 billion in private capital. The deal is designed to onshore supplies of rare earth elements and permanent magnets that are critical for defense systems, electric vehicles, and advanced chips. The U.S. is heavily dependent on China for these materials. The facilities are expected to be fully commercial by 2026. This is part of a broader push to secure strategic minerals and reduce reliance on adversarial supply chains. The USS Cincinnati has docked at Cambodia's Ream Naval Base for a 5-day friendship visit. This marks the first U.S. Navy port call there since China financed major upgrades to the facility. The Independence-class littoral combat ship arrived near the coastal city of Sihanoukville. The visit will include ship tours, joint sports events, and meetings between American and Cambodian officers. Washington has long worried that Beijing might gain exclusive military access to Ream. The base now boasts a new pier and dry dock built with Chinese money. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet insists the base remains open to all friendly navies. The visit underscores a cautious warming in U.S.-Cambodian ties even as Chinese vessels continue to use parts of the base. A Chinese asylum seeker who secretly filmed detention facilities in Xinjiang is battling to stay in the United States. Guan Heng says he recorded video of security infrastructure and alleged rights abuses in 2020 before fleeing China. He traveled through Hong Kong, Ecuador and the Bahamas before reaching Florida and posting much of his footage on YouTube. He was detained last August during an operation targeting his housemates and is now held in a New York State jail. An immigration judge is reviewing his case. U.S. officials briefly tried to deport him to Uganda but backed down amid public and congressional pressure. Lawyers warn his return to China would likely mean imprisonment and torture. Britain's Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is facing fierce backlash after outlining a vision for an AI-driven surveillance system. Mahmood says she wants the eyes of the state to monitor high-risk offenders at all times. She is backing police trials of predictive algorithms to flag people deemed most likely to commit serious crimes. Some forces are already testing AI assistance at crime scenes. Proposals would track around 1,000 of the most dangerous men. Civil liberties groups and opposition politicians have condemned the plan as authoritarian. They warn it could entrench discrimination against marginalized communities and normalize constant state monitoring. Mahmood is investing £4 million to develop an AI crime prevention map by 2030. Syria's defense ministry has announced a 15-day extension of a fragile ceasefire with the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces. The extension is effective from 11 p.m. local time on January 24. The truce covers front lines in the country's northeast where Damascus-aligned units and SDF fighters have clashed near key oil fields and border crossings. The extension is intended to reduce tensions and allow humanitarian access. Core political disputes remain unresolved. Kurdish officials are seeking lasting security guarantees and recognition of local self-administration. The Assad government wants to reassert full control over territory and resources. International observers say any sustained pause in fighting is critical to stabilizing an area that still hosts U.S. troops and ISIS remnants. Iraq's dominant Shia coalition has formally nominated former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki to return to the country's top job. The coordination framework announced the decision in Baghdad on January 24 after caretaker Premier Mohammed Shia al-Sudani stepped aside earlier this month. Al-Maliki, now 75, leads the State of Law coalition and maintains close ties to Iran-aligned militias. He is a highly polarizing figure for many Sunnis and Kurds who blame his earlier tenure for deepening sectarian divisions and enabling the rise of ISIS. The bloc urged parliament to convene a session to elect the president before confirming a new prime minister. The nomination is likely to polarize Sunnis while the government faces U.S. pressure to disarm Iran-aligned militias. Uganda's military chief is threatening the opposition after President Yoweri Museveni claimed victory in the January 15 presidential election. Opposition leader Bobi Wine says his wife Barbara is hospitalized after soldiers raided their home outside Kampala. Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, has been in hiding since rejecting official results that gave Museveni more than 70% of the vote. According to Wine, dozens of men in military uniform stormed his Majir residence, beat staff and a security guard, and choked his wife. Opposition figures say more than 2,000 supporters have been detained. Rights groups accuse the military of systematically silencing dissent through intimidation and violence. China has opened corruption investigations into two of its most senior military figures, including General Zhang Youxia. He is vice chair of the powerful Central Military Commission and widely seen as one of President Xi Jinping's closest allies. The Defense Ministry says Zhang and General Liu Junli, chief of the Joint Staff Department, are suspected of serious violations. The probes mark a dramatic escalation of Xi's years-long anti-corruption and loyalty campaign inside the People's Liberation Army. The campaign has already swept up Rocket Force commanders, 2 former defense ministers, and at least 8 other generals in recent years. Analysts say the purge is slowing weapons procurement and signaling that no one in the military elite is untouchable. At least 7 people have been killed and more than 80 are missing after a devastating nighttime landslide buried homes in Indonesia's West Java province. The disaster struck around 2:30 a.m. near Pasalanga village in West Bandung following days of intense rainfall during the October to March monsoon season. Local news footage shows entire houses swallowed by mud and debris. Rescuers are digging by hand in unstable ground as heavy machinery struggles to reach the site. Authorities say around 30 homes were destroyed and dozens of residents were evacuated. Fears are growing that the final death toll will climb. Experts warn that deforestation and aggressive land clearing have made Indonesia's steep hillsides increasingly vulnerable to deadly slides. Advisors to former President Donald Trump are reportedly considering a full naval blockade of oil shipments to Cuba as part of a broader strategy to force regime change in Havana. According to accounts of internal discussions, hardline officials argue that Cuba's dependence on imported fuel makes energy the chokehold to kill the communist government's finances. The idea is said to be backed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other Cuba hawks. It would represent a dramatic escalation beyond existing sanctions and could trigger serious clashes with ships from allied nations that trade with the island. No final decision has been made, but the reports are already alarming regional governments and international law experts who warn of potential violations of maritime law. A senior Iranian official is warning that Tehran will treat any U.S. military attack as an all-out war against us. The warning comes as an American aircraft carrier strike group heads toward the Middle East. The Pentagon has ordered the USS Abraham Lincoln and several destroyers into the region. This adds nearly 5,700 personnel to U.S. forces already deployed in and around the Persian Gulf. Iranian officials say their armed forces are on high alert and will respond if U.S. assets violate the country's sovereignty. Analysts note that previous buildups preceded limited U.S. strikes on Iran's nuclear and military infrastructure. Fears are growing that a miscalculation on either side could quickly escalate into a regional conflict. Iran also denied halting executions of 800 detained protesters. 6 people have been injured too critically after a stabbing attack at a Kurdish demonstration in the Belgian city of Antwerp. The attack occurred Thursday evening near Opperplein, where 200 to 300 people had gathered to protest violence in northeastern Syria. Witnesses say several men infiltrated the crowd and suddenly began stabbing participants indiscriminately. Emergency teams rushed 6 victims to hospital. Police have arrested 4 suspects and opened an attempted murder investigation. Authorities say they are not treating the case as terrorism, though Kurdish community groups insist the attack was politically motivated. The demonstration was organized by Belgium's Kurdish community and included families with women and children. French President Emmanuel Macron is fast-tracking legislation that would effectively ban children under 15 from using major social media platforms. The draft bill, due Monday, begins an accelerated parliamentary procedure aiming for enactment by September. Macron argues children's brains are not for manipulation and says tighter rules are needed to shield young teens from addictive feeds, harassment and harmful content. The ban builds on France's existing prohibition of mobile phones in schools. If passed, platforms like TikTok, Instagram and YouTube would face new age verification and enforcement obligations. Australia recently implemented a similar ban for children under 16. The law represents one of Europe's toughest regimes for protecting minors online. The European Commission is proposing to extend for 6 months the suspension of a massive retaliatory tariff package targeting $109 billion worth of U.S. goods. The countermeasures were set to expire on February 7 and could hit products ranging from Boeing aircraft to American-made cars and bourbon. The decision follows President Donald Trump backing down from threats to impose levies on European countries opposing his Greenland annexation push. Commission spokesperson Olaf Gill said the measures would remain suspended but can be unsuspended if needed. Keeping the tariffs on hold is meant to de-escalate tensions and preserve space for a longer-term trade deal, while reminding Washington that Europe still has powerful tools in reserve. German authorities have arrested a 36-year-old Lebanese national at Berlin-Brandenburg Airport on suspicion of belonging to Hamas and planning attacks on Jewish and Israeli targets in Europe. The man, identified as Mohammed S., was detained after arriving on a flight from Beirut. Federal prosecutors say he is linked to a Hamas network that has been trying to move weapons into Europe. Several alleged accomplices were arrested in late 2025. The suspect is accused of being a member of a foreign terrorist organization and acting as a weapons facilitator. His arrest comes amid heightened security around Jewish institutions following the ongoing conflict in Gaza and concerns about militant networks targeting Europe. Russian hackers targeted Poland's power grid in late December in what officials call the strongest attack on the country's energy infrastructure in years. Security researchers linked the operation to Russia's infamous sandworm hacking unit. The attacks on December 29 and 30 targeted two combined heat and power plants and tried to cut communications between renewable energy installations and grid operators. The malware shared code with tools used in a 2015 attack that knocked out power for 230,000 Ukrainian customers. Prime Minister Donald Tusk said defenses held and no outages occurred. The attempt could have affected up to 500,000 homes. The attack coincided with the 10th anniversary of the 2015 sandworm-linked Ukraine blackout. The Russian embassy did not respond to requests for comment. Pope Leo XIV is calling for urgent global rules on artificial intelligence, warning that overly affectionate chatbots risk creating unhealthy emotional dependence and undermining human relationships. In a message ahead of the Catholic Church's World Day of Social Communications, the Pope said AI tools that mimic faces, voices and emotions can quietly invade people's most intimate emotional sphere. He urged governments and international bodies to require clear labeling of AI-generated content. The Pope told media organizations not to use algorithms merely to capture a few extra seconds of attention. Educators were urged to prioritize AI and media literacy in schools. The warning comes as AI companionship apps gain popularity among young people. Italy has recalled its ambassador to Switzerland in protest after a Swiss court released on bail the owner of a bar where 40 people were killed in a New Year's Day fire. Jacques Moretti, who ran the Le Constellation bar in the ski resort of Crans-Montana, had been held since January 9 on suspicion of negligent homicide. He was freed after posting 200,000 Swiss francs in bail and agreeing to daily check-ins with police. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni called the decision an affront to the memory of the victims. Many of the dead were Italian teenagers. Meloni accused Swiss authorities of underestimating the risks of flight and evidence tampering, escalating a rare diplomatic dispute. Russia has launched one of its heaviest overnight attacks in months on Ukraine's two largest cities, Kyiv and Kharkiv, even as Ukrainian, Russian and U.S. negotiators hold trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi. Officials say at least one person was killed and many others injured as missiles and drones struck a dormitory for displaced people, a hospital and a maternity unit. Ukraine's Air Force reports 375 drones and 21 missiles were launched, causing massive power cuts that left more than 1 million properties without electricity or heating. President Volodymyr Zelensky said the strikes prove there must be no delays in delivering Western air defense systems. The attack occurred while peace negotiations were ongoing in Abu Dhabi. The Canada Pension Plan Investment Board is under fire for lending roughly $300 million, about 416 million Canadian dollars, to Elon Musk's AI company xAI. The financing helps fund a massive data center in Memphis, Tennessee that powers xAI's Grok chatbot. The chatbot has faced global scrutiny after being used to generate sexually explicit deepfake images of women on X, formerly Twitter. Critics say it is inappropriate for a public pension fund to support an AI platform linked to abuse and harassment. The board argues the loan backs physical infrastructure rather than specific product features. Activists and some policy experts are demanding stricter ethical screens on future tech investments by public pension funds. That concludes our global news for today. Thank you for watching.